of the board of directors for this corporation called the American government.
A monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised.
The White House government website, the Spanish version, cannot be found anymore. And in this little box that takes you to the home page, the words that they chose to use are "go home." The White House government website.
Listen, we've got to do this. Let me hear you all say ELGLES, Eagles! Let's go, Birds!
Thank you, sir. The next item here is the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Treaty. Yes, sir.
You know what? So the entire time I've been playing this video, can you hear me now? Can anybody hear me now? Give me a 5x5. Anybody? Can you hear me? No? Yeah, so apparently this morning when I was setting up the show, because my wife was still sleeping, I hit the no sound button on my computer, and apparently I did not realize that was what was going on. I apologize. So basically you missed the whole first part of everything that I said, which is fantastic. Yeah, so the moron in Philadelphia, obviously, that was awful. I apologize, guys. I don't even know what the hell is going on there. Wow, that's terrible. Well, okay, so yeah, the moron, the White House thing, pretty funny. You know, maybe a little offensive for our Latino people, but yeah, 13 minutes of sign language. That sucks. That's pretty bad, man. I apologize for that. I'm gonna have to go ahead and edit out the beginning of the video when I get done streaming it, so people watching this afterwards don't you know, get bored. But no, what I was saying was we've got quite a bit of stuff to go into this morning. Started out with a little bit of levity, but when I was doing the research for this morning's show, Title 42 is the healthcare. Man, see, I ruined the whole thing because basically the executive order signed yesterday. It's quite perplexing depending on your view of how this whole global or this worldwide control matrix is set up, because both the climate, taking us out of the climate accord, as well as removing us from the World Health Organization, pretty much set back the plans that have been being laid down for the last 60, 70 years. Well, 60, 70 years, because as long as they can remain permanent, because that's the climate, obviously the climate change was how they planned on controlling every aspect of your life, how you can heat your home, what you're allowed to eat, what you're allowed to drive, how you're allowed to be, you know, your transportation. Remember, you own nothing and be happy is the whole idea behind that. Renting and sharing things, all to reduce the carbon footprint. So by removing us from that Paris Climate Accords, that creates a huge problem. And as I was saying, I know everybody has differing opinions on whether or not the elite want to kill Trump, but it's kind of very JFK-ish. And I use that, of course, as an example, because there's a lot of stuff around JFK. There's actually a story about him actually plotting to, like, him and Jackie planning the assassination hoax in the White House a couple weeks before the actual thing supposedly happened. But I'm not getting into that. Honestly, I haven't even looked into that yet. That's something I heard a few weeks back and just have so much other stuff going on. But, you know, if they did not want to kill him before, they probably do now. Because the climate accord, that was their bread and butter right there. That's the linchpin of the UN Agenda 2030. They're going to cordon off the resources and place you in 15-minute cities to fight climate change. Remember, climate change is what caused the fires in Los Angeles. So, and we're going to have a bit of a law-heavy stream. I changed the name of the stream, obviously, because I want to make it more law-centric anyways. And I figure, well, we all know that the government's primarily a bunch of parasites. So morning law and politics, right? The many ticks that call themselves government. And this morning, I want to show you guys how significant these executive orders are, because say what you want about the man and believe what you want. I know a lot of my subscribers feel like everybody works together. I think it's more like a Game of Thrones thing, or like even like I think Zachariah Sitchin is a shill, and I think that's a whole psychological operation about the Nibiru and all that stuff. But the story that's presented kind of seems to be how everything plays out. You know, you've got the Enki and Enlil, and Enki wants to wipe out humanity, and Enlil wants to like keep them in a benevolent despotism sort of thing. And that's not even really a good analogy. I'd say it's more like the Game of Thrones, where like all the nobles are vying for the crown, but they're all under the Iron Bank. And that's sort of kind of how it works, in my opinion, from what I've been able to gather from my study of law and everything. So with that being said, I'm going to show you exactly why I say that. This is a huge move. These executive orders are a massive move, okay? in the opposite direction of global communism, of worldwide communism. And I do say global because they are globalists. They're the ones who push the globe and all that. So let's get back into this. So he signed the executive order, right? Pretty fantastic. I have to say it's impressive to me. And here's a good example. On record
is among the hottest years recorded.
The hottest year on record.
Another hot year. Global warming. What will we do about that? Politicians from most every country promised to deal with it by signing something called the Paris Climate Agreement.
A historic climate agreement in Paris.
But when President Trump took office, he said,
the United States will withdraw.
What? We will withdraw? We alone?
President Trump isolated the United States with his reckless and indefensible decision.
My neighbors in New York agree with that. And so do most.
Reckless and indefensible, but there is literally zero evidence of climate change whatsoever. There's a lot of evidence of weather modification and engineered storms, directed energy weapons, you know, all of those, but there's zero evidence of climate change whatsoever. In fact, it's negative fucking 14 degrees outside right now. So, yeah, I don't think we're going to be catching on fire anytime soon.
To the media.
And of course, the negative 14 degrees is probably an engineered thing. What the fuck is a polar vortex in the first place? But
yeah,
a lot at stake, potentially, for the planet.
Really? I bet they don't even know what was in the agreement. I didn't.
Paris Accord was somewhere between a farce and a fraud.
Manhattan Institute senior fellow Orrin Cass is one of the few people who've actually read the Paris Agreement.
A good example of how it's a farce is actually once I publish this video, there's going to be a little Wikipedia box under my video that says climate change and then gives a big disclaimer about how what I'm saying is misinformation and how there actually is climate change. Sure, you know what? I'll go with it. There is climate change. You see those planes in the sky spraying shit all over the sky, right? And then they use NEXRAD antenna systems to blast microwave frequencies into the sky to change the spin of the atoms or molecules or however the hell it works. But basically they create pressure systems and crash them together to engineer storms. They don't create weather entirely, but they've pretty much mastered the ability to manipulate the existing conditions to create whatever sort of storm that they want, or, you know, drought or polar vortex, whatever, right?
And also the commitment set in by every country.
You don't even have to mention greenhouse gases in your commitment if you don't want to. You send in any piece of paper you want. We're going to staple them all together, and we're going to call that the Paris Accord. Everyone sent in a piece of paper, and they stapled it together and held it up and said, this is amazing.
China has made a major commitment.
So what's in the commitments that every country made?
India has ratified the Paris Climate Accord, committing the world's fastest growing economy to limit carbon dioxide emissions.
What you find is they either pledged to do exactly what they were already going to do anyway, or pledged even less than that. China, for instance, said, we pledge to reach peak emissions by about 2030. Well, the United States government had already done a study to guess when Chinese emissions would peak, and their guess was about 2030.
Peak doesn't mean stop. It just means stop increasing.
That's right. So in fact, China promised they will continue increasing their emissions for some time to come.
And yet,
China was actually one of the better pledges. India made no pledge to limit their emissions at all. They pledged only to become more efficient, but they proposed to become efficient less quickly than they're already becoming more efficient. So their pledge was to slow down.
So yeah, you get the idea. It's all bullshit, right? I do want to address beyond elemental, all the world to a certain degree. I do believe there are metascriptors. I like that that term. I think Infinite Plane Society coined it as the first time I've ever heard it. Metascriptors. I think it's a combination of things that are both organic, but also the way that everything unfolds according to a specific design. I mean, it's certainly when you're a billionaire, or when you are billionaires, you spare no amount of money to engineer opinion and society and to present yourself. A great example of this would be the Elon Musk the Tony Stark archetype. That's a little bit of a Tony Stark archetype that they have impressed and painted over upon Elon Musk, right? So he even appeared in one of the Iron Man movies. And they really want to give this idea of like this billionaire tech whiz who's an entrepreneur breaking all the rules. You know, he's this really cool, hip guy, right? And they want you to associate the Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, and I guarantee you they've spared no amount of money to put that impression into the public mind. Simultaneously, though, there are things that are really happening, and that evidence, the battle between those who want to absolutely annihilate us and enslave the remainder of us under global communism or worldwide communism, and the others, I keep saying global like it's a fucking globe. But anyway, worldwide communism is just catchy. It's what's been on my, we've heard it for years. And then there's the other side that seems to want some more of a beneficent, it's the actions that are speaking for themselves. I mean, look, so by pulling us out of the climate accord, here's one of the things we're avoiding. This is Australia.
The UK has just concluded a trial of a personal carbon dioxide allowance, which, as the name implies, calculates how much carbon dioxide is produced annually in the UK and then divides that per person per day, then works out by how much that figure needs to fall in order to meet net zero goals. We have the white paper in my office that informed the trial. The whole concept of a daily carbon dioxide allowance is now out there for all to see. Conspiracy theory no more. I bloody told you so. To anyone who is advised by data and empirical evidence, not mass formation psychosis, carbon dioxide is the gas of life, necessary for all life on Earth. It's plant food. The more CO2 produced, the more food, plants and trees the Earth is blessed with. The climate change scam is not founded on science, it's founded on feelings. It has become a religion for those who consider themselves above religion. Quick maths means your daily food allowance of 2,600 grams of carbon dioxide would be enough to buy 26 grams of red meat. One mouthful. And then
they're trying to pull this shit in Australia, and they're giving you a carbon allowance. This is what they want to do. That's why they wanted to create the digital IDs. In Australia, they are setting it up to where you have to have a license to get on the internet, an ID, essentially, because they're like, oh, TikTok's dangerous for kids, so we're going to make you have, and that's just obviously a stepping stone to the digital ID. You're going to have to now have an ID to get online in Australia. And so they want to set this up so that they can control you, fine you, and fee you for some made-up shit called a carbon footprint, right? For other made-up shit called climate change. And I mean, this is their linchpin. I mean, this is right up there with this is beyond Project Bluebeam. I mean, they've actually been putting this into the public zeitgeist since the 60s, right? Since the 50s and 60s, since they really started tinkering with the weather. They've wanted you to believe that there's too many people using too much stuff. We're destroying the planet. We all need, because the whole concept behind worldwide communism is they needed to create an existential threat, make the world believe that this is a worldwide existential threat. It's either do or die. So we all need to come together and make sacrifices, except for the elite, of course. They can still eat meat and fly around on private jets and all that good stuff, right? Because they're not them, but everyone else, all of us plebs, us peasants, right, need to make sacrifices for the greater good of humanity. Not to mention a massive depopulation would be needed, because there's, just like Bill Gates said, there's, we need to reduce one of these algebraic symbols here, right, which would be people, in order to get the rest of this to come down. If you guys have seen the TED Talk, if not, I probably butchered it, but you get the idea. There's only one thing to reduce in his equation. It's like people, services, et cetera, carbon. Well, the only thing that's going to drop to reduce the rest of it would be people. Okay. And so this whole climate thing is their main linchpin. Even above the whole COOF thing, the whole, the what we've went through the last 5 years that I can't really say on YouTube a whole lot. This is even a greater linchpin. I mean, they've already cordoned off massive amounts of the United States for environmental protection. I mean, the entire EPA is a scam. It's really just to be able to collateralize large swaths of natural resources for institutional investors to lend the government money. That's really what the EPA is all about. So anyways, let us continue.
Need nothing else that day. I raised this years ago in this chamber when the World Economic Forum first called for a limit on red meat of 30 grams a day. Another conspiracy theory that's come true. A cooked breakfast will have to be half the size to...
William, we don't need to get rid of anything. It's all made up. It's stupid. It's made up stuff. You know that, right? I'm sure you do. You've been a subscriber for quite some time. Yeah, you know this is all made up. We don't actually need to do anything. They just need to stop fucking with the weather and stop being greedy totalitarian assholes trying to control every aspect of our lives. That's really all that needs to be done. Dorian said, if the oligarchs think there's too many people, why are they still here? Said exactly, lead by example. See, it's not so much that they think that they do 100% think that there's too many people, but not to be sustained on the world or, by the resources of the world. They think there's too many people to successfully, openly take their mask off and try to place under totalitarianism without getting themselves strung up. That's what there's too many people for. See, there's not too many people. They know that the world is capable of sustaining the current population, no problem. There's no such thing as climate change. I mean, I'm talking about the ones on top. There are obviously useful idiots that actually believe this dumb shit, especially leftist libtards. And that is a real thing. I'm not playing into the two-party dichotomy. I'm being serious. Those people that subscribe to actual leftist ideology, which isn't a term that comes from the United States, it comes from the French Revolution. They're very gullible idiots, right? They're very sadomasochistic, right? Where they like just self-sacrifice, govern me harder, daddy type of attitude. And they're also they tend to be mentally insane. The Troons, Rainbow Warriors are a perfect example. The Transformers, right? But they think that they know that there's not too many people for the world to sustain. There's too many people for them to be able to control without ending up 6 feet under is basically the issue that they have with the amount of people that's in the world. So 500 million they determined was a manageable number of people that they could track, trace, and place under a technocratic dictatorship where the AI is actually the government. You guys realize that's the goal. They want AI to actually be the government because so constant surveillance, just like they have in China where they've got an app called WeChat. Okay. And WeChat is basically their entire everything. It's got their banking. They can order food. They can order transportation. They don't leave the building that they live in. It has everything that they need in there also. But when they do, if they jaywalk, say, for instance, the camera with the artificial intelligence and the facial recognition system will see them jaywalk, immediately identify them, which it's gotten really good at since it had a bunch of practice while everybody was wearing muzzles, and immediately identify them, charge them for jaywalking, and there is no hearing. There is no, hey, I'm going to fight this. They just immediately deduct the amount out of the account because the AI seen them, recognized them. It's cut and dry. That's what they want, AI governance, these worldwide communists. See, I keep saying the global thing like this, whatever, but worldwide communists, that's what they want.
Squeeze into your daily allowance, again, with nothing left over for food for the rest of the day. Your daily allowance will cover 2 plant-based meals a day because predatory billionaires like BlackRock and Bill Gates are buying up farmland to grow the cereals and soy needed for plant-based meals. So not surprisingly, the whole thing is rigged towards the products they can exploit for their own financial gain, including plant-based fake meat, which contains 20 chemical ingredients. Most are shared with pet food. The World Economic Forum at Davos has hosted speakers calling for this system to include carbon dioxide credit trading, so rich people can live their lives exactly as they do right now, and poor people can skimp on food, clothing, travel, electricity, and entertainment, and sell their excess credits to rich people. The rules never apply to the people that make them. The war on livestock is a war on good nutrition based on a lie, which is designed to enrich billionaires.
So, yeah, that's pretty much what we just pulled out of. And if you've seen the map oh shit, sorry. Yeah, I'm done sharing that anyway. But if you've seen the map from the previous video, we're pretty much the only country out of all the developed and even many undeveloped nations, or so-called third world nations, that's actually pulling out of this thing. It's creating a huge upset in the intelligence controlled Mockingbird media, they're all talking shit about it, which of course, admittedly could be a show. But I mean, for this being a show, these are some drastic moves that are being made. Let me move on because I'm going to show you guys the law behind this stuff so you can really understand what I see when I see what's happening and the moves being made. One thing I said when it was muted in the beginning, which I apologize for, that was awful because I thought I had the sound, like not the microphone muted. I thought I had the speaker muted. Didn't want to wake my wife up this morning when I was setting up. But one thing I realized when I was looking through this stuff is Title 42. So actually, before I even get into this, let me go ahead and get into the actual what the pulling out of the World Health Organization. We're going to look at that real quick, and then I'm going to explain exactly what I see. So today or yesterday, Donald Trump
Withdrawing from the World Health Organization.
Pulled us out of the World Health Organization as well. Right? So the climate accord, well, that was a rather lackluster video, wasn't it? That's not the one I wanted. Is it? Yeah. We're going to get into the law behind this stuff very shortly, but let's watch a couple things on what's going on behind
Easy
this.
government continued the Morrison government's campaign to sign away Australian sovereignty.
This again is Australia. And do I have any subscribers from Australia? Probably not.
Despite the attempt failing, WHO's power grab is ongoing. WHO is not independent. Their owners are corporate donors who contribute most of the WHO budget. WHO's current sugar daddy is Bill Gates, who has made billions out of his investment in the same vaccines that WHO promotes. Gates bought the WHO and they now recommend his products. It is that simple. The head of the WHO is Tedros Ghebreyesus, previously health minister of a terrorist organization called the Tigray People's Liberation Front, where he used international aid to buy power and punish his enemies. The regions of Ethiopia that Tedros staffed for medical supplies suffered disastrous cholera epidemics in 2006, 2009, 2011. Independent investigators found Tedros was, quote, fully complicit in the terrible suffering and dying that spread in East Africa. He's a killer. WHO is rotting from the head. Last week, Associated Press reported on the WHO sex crime scandal, where WHO staff has sexually exploited girls and women during the Congo's recent Ebola outbreak. Inhuman. At least 83 WHO staff engaged in abuse, including rape and forced abortions, with victims as young as 13. WHO refused to fire the perpetrators, using the absurd argument their actions didn't violate WHO's sexual exploitation policies because the victims were not receiving WHO aid. The raping part is okay with Tedros. This is the person who heads an organisation that many in government and academia want to elevate above the Australian Parliament. One Nation rejects the UN WHO power grab.
So what's interesting is one of the things in Trump's executive order to pull us out of the World Health Organization, he cited undue influence in American politics, which is absolutely right. But most people, unless you understand exactly what's going on to our common law, like Peg just said, and Trump obviously knows what our law is and what it's supposed to be. And I say that for good reason. One, his actual Treasury Secretary appointee, I'm not just saying this stuff, did actually say we need to abolish 1870. I was wrong the day before yesterday when I said he did not say it. It had been removed from the YouTube clip. He said that we need to remove the 1871 Organic Act and go back to the original trust, federal trust of 1776. On top of admitting that the Bank of England is the clearing agent if we were to default, basically, if they were to call in the debt. It would be the Bank of England that's the clearing agent. Those are two very, very stunning admissions to be said in public in a congressional hearing. Pretty crazy. But even beyond that, the move of taking us out of the WHO is so important because, as I've said, if you're a subscriber of this channel, you've watched my law classes, my Magna Carta classes that I've recently did. Streams, we'll call them, not classes. I do want to start up classes soon. We're going to talk about that before I get off today. But You know that the entire thing is just the administration of infant estates. Okay, well, part of the administration of infant estates is you have to maintain the property. All of this actually falls under welfare and healthcare, which is what the entirety of Title 42 is about. They've been weaponizing Title 42, and I'm going to show you. We're going to go through what Title 42 is. I'm going to give you guys, of course, if you're new to this channel, I'm going to give you a brief rundown of how the estates are administered. It's always good to have a refresher. You can never hear it too many times until you entirely understand how they do it. It goes all the way back to the Magna Carta, and I'm going to show you. But before we get into that, just one more thing about the World Health Organization as an entity is these guys are literal mobsters. They're propped up by corporate oligarchs. They're international criminals. The leader of the World Health Organization, Tedros, can't pronounce his fucking last name, is actually a terrorist, right? He is a terrorist from Ethiopia. Well, I don't know if he's from Ethiopia, but that's where he committed acts of terrorism. And I've got a little video on him real quick so you guys can see exactly what we were facing. We're going to get into how important this is. See, they didn't have to hand our sovereignty over to the United Nations directly. Just by signing on to the World Health Organization treaty, they would have handed over the administration of the infant estates to the World Health Organization. And then all of the orders regarding, because it's not just under healthcare, and I actually just learned this while doing research for this morning's stream. I didn't realize that under Title 42, the healthcare title, right? It isn't just healthcare. They put everything, including NASA, under that because it's all for the welfare of mankind, all for the welfare of Americans. And that's the essence of the administration of infant estates. Okay. And we're going to get into that because if you're new to this channel, you probably have no idea what I'm saying. But let me play this about Tedros real quick. And then, this is Rita Panahi, I believe her name is, from Australia. Again, we're getting a lot of stuff from Australia this morning. And we'll check on just how crooked Tedros is real quick.
Let's start with a story from the Daily Mail. And actually, I read this in the Gulf Times. So we have a diverse range of news sources here, but it's all about the WHO chief possibly facing genocide charges. We have heard that a Nobel Peace Prize nominated economist has called for the Director General to be.
Interestingly, Dorian, before we get into that, you say that he has another war. He's actually the only president who hasn't started a war. Now, I'm not for politics. I know exactly how they're doing what they're doing, and I can explain it to you how the Congress isn't even supposed to have jurisdiction over the people within the states at all. That's demonstrated simply in Long v. Rasmussen, 1922, where an IRS agent tried to distrain a state citizen, also known as a non-taxpayer, by the bar pirates, so they don't give up the game, of her property for taxes. But she took him to a court of equity personally, not the IRS, but held him liable personally, which is what you can do under common law, or equity under common law, even though it's not technically law, it's equity, but it's not commercial equity, and or UCC equity rather. And the court had to rule in her favor that the revenue codes only apply to taxpayers, not to non-taxpayers. With them, Congress does not presume to deal, and the latter are without their scope, right? And so that's just a fact. They have no jurisdiction over the people within the states here in the United States. And I know exactly how they've obtained jurisdiction through probate, essentially, presumption of infancy by the states originally, a sheeting, which means to take property under because somebody died without a will, or the heir is not of age, so it comes under administration basically. And then that's what they pledged when they pledged their full faith and credit to the bankruptcy of the United States. They pledged the estates that they had sheeted of the people within the state that they had taken under presumption of various, infancy, distracted person, lunacy. That's also why I think a lot of people ended up going to the insane asylums in the late 1800s in a lot of states. There was a huge epidemic of people being put in sanitariums and asylums, and I think that's so that they could take their estates. It makes perfect sense. That's why they would have done it. But by 33, they were able to pledge all of that property, that chattel that they now had under administration, to the United States, who then mortgaged it, as evidenced in March 9th, 1933 House Congressional Record, page 83, second paragraph, where it says that the money actually represents the mortgage on the property of all the homes and other property of all the people in the nation, which they could only do if they had the ability to dispose of that property in the first place, which was the groundwork was laid for that by the states through their various probate codes that never had to be in the founding documents. But I'm digressing. My point is knowing all that, I still have to say what he's doing spits in the face of everything that they've spent the last 150 years setting up. It does. And I'm going to show you why. And on top of that, he also is the only president who hasn't started a war. So I'm not trying to harp on it. I don't look for him to save us, like to give me my sovereignty back, or to, because only you can do that. For the government to tell you you're sovereign is like the slave telling the master he's the master. It doesn't work. It can never happen. You can never look to the government as a daddy. You can never look to the government to take care of your problems or to be able to access your sovereign authority. You have to learn the law to do that, because you have to know how to be able to file actions at common law. And also the very first action you have to file is the declaration of claim of your estate. And you have to put it on the public record. And that's it. Once that's on there and you set it up the way I'm going to teach whoever's interested how, and we're going to figure out how we're going to do that, because I'm not wasting my time on people that are not actually going to do it or are incapable of understanding how to do it because they don't take it seriously. I'm not doing that again. But once you do that, there's nothing they can do. And people who bitch about where our money goes, right? You take your estate back from them, they cannot generate, because we don't have money. All we have is debt contracts based on the mortgage of your estate. So, and that's what you call federal or dollars. They're actually Federal Reserve notes. Once you take your estate back, all your bitching is done because you've removed yourself and your participation from the situation out of it. And if anybody ever fucks with you again, you spank their ass. And that's how it works. So just a little side note there. But let's listen about Tedros real quick.
Prosecuted, and he has actually filed a complaint at the International Criminal Court in The Hague. The Economist has claimed that Tedros was a crucial decision maker in relation to security service actions that include killing, arbitrary detention, and torturing of Ethiopians. Liz, we mustn't forget that Tedros's appointment was highly controversial, and he was rebuked early on for wanting to honour brutal dictator Robert Mugabe.
Yes, his last name.
Yeah, Rita, I think one of the wonders of the world at the moment is that this guy still has a job. Even before presiding over this massive debacle, the pandemic, and being completely exposed as Beijing's puppet throughout this entire year, what's really exposed Tedros.
That's another thing. He's entirely controlled by the Chinese Communist Party, who in turn is controlled by the Crown District of London, which is trying to spread this communism, or has actually spread what I like to call communism light through the debt slavery, trust indenture system via the Bar Association. So the Lawyers Guild is a communist organization. They always have been. And they're the ones trying to essentially place the world in neo-feudalism. Or I won't say they're the ones who are doing it, but they're the primary instrument of making that happen. Every country has a bar association. It's all headed up by the International Bar Association in the Crown District of London, which is under the control, which first of all is sovereign, ancient, not part of England, and is, let's put it this way. When the Queen goes to the City of London, she kisses the ring of the mayor of the City of London. Well, the Queen's dead, so the King goes to London, and he kissed. Tell me if you're in, if I'm right or wrong about that. Anybody who lives over there, but I've seen a lot of stuff on that, and I do know from reading the Magna Carta that it has retained its and was given its sovereign independence and authority according to its ancient uses and customs, or customs and usages in the Magna Carta, and it's stayed that way to this day. Dorian, again, we're not even supposed to, over here in the United States, or the continental United States, the union of the several Confederate states, which all states are Confederate, we're not even supposed to vote for the fucking president in the first place. That's the whole thing. So in one sense, that would make sense. If everything, like he's taking Jerome Powell out of the Federal Reserve or telling him he needs to step down. He's talking about abolishing the Federal Reserve. He's talking about replacing income tax with tariffs, because income tax only applies to corporations anyways and is entirely unconstitutional. You should never have the first rights to the fruit of your labor unless you're a slave, which of course that's what they've set up here. So all the things that he's talking about, he's done so far. And if he does those things, then, and we actually return the sovereignty of the states, then no, you would never have to vote. The only person you have to vote for is a county elector. That's it. That's how we're supposed to vote for the president. We don't vote for the president because, again, back to Long v. Rasmussen, Congress doesn't have shit to do with us. But they have no jurisdiction over us. The president has nothing to say to us, anything. He deals with the business of the union of the sovereign Confederate republics, as far as representing them internationally in foreign policy or foreign trade, and in the instance of war, conscripting and leading a military, which is also composed of the several militaries of the Union states, because each state's supposed to have its own military. That's the whole thing. People who are bitching about various things. I'm not saying necessarily you, Dorian. I know that things work a certain way in UK, but they have no idea how the law is actually supposed to work in the first place. So that's a big issue with a lot of people here in the States who are bitching about what's going on, even though, as I'm about to show you, pulling us out of the World Health Organization essentially saved us from immediate tyranny. Because if that was allowed to go through, say Kamala was I'll just call the emperor of the United States, because that's pretty much what the presidential office has become, is the emperor of the United States. And Kamala goes ahead with the World Health Organization. Then next thing you know, here's another coup 2.0 or whatever, right? 3.0, whatever you want to call it, because they did do the pox thing. But all of the orders would have came from the top down regarding the administration of your state. In fact, since we're on the topic, you get it. Tedros a gangster. He was accused of committing genocide in Ethiopia. I have a video of that, which I cannot show on YouTube. It's pretty heinous what they did in Ethiopia, actually. And you have to have a strong constitution in order to be able to watch that. But Dorian, he says, it never does. We need to know what they're. Well, see, here's the thing, though. There's always law. This is where I disagree with a lot of people who say, so if we had a perfect world of internal monarchy, meaning every single person knew how to behave and conduct business as a sovereign, then yeah, there's no need for any kind of organization or structure known as a government. But since that's not reality, that's fantasy world, right? There is a necessity, and the original government set up here in the Republic of the United States, right? The several sovereign republics that make up the United States. We had that form where the government served us. It's right in Article 1. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Beyond elemental. Anarchy means no rulers, not no rules. But the fact is, we had that perfect system of government, as close as you can get in the United States or in the world, in this imperfect world, under the Articles of Confederation, which is why they staged the false flag known as the Whiskey Rebellion in order to get the Constitution ratified and create the judicial branch of government, which, as Jefferson said, worked like gravity by night and by day to usurp the sovereignty of the states. And that was done through the probate that they grandfathered under English common law, which was created by William the Conqueror in 1066, though it wasn't called probate. It was called, it's known as ecclesiastical law, dealing with matters of life and death, basically inheritance. And so my point is that the government is servants, okay? They are actually had to specifically be given the right to vote by Article 1 of the Constitution. Where it says that basically all free men are counted as one vote, including those bound to a term of service for years. Okay, they had to specifically put that because otherwise they're not considered free men. People in government are not considered free men. All right. What they mean by bound to a term of service for years is the bond that they have to give along with their oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States that binds them to a term of service for years, and they are public servants. They're not free. They're actually beneath the people. And that's how it was set up. And they never, ever, 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 ever legislate, which legislate is the statutory creation. It's not creating law, because mankind does not create law, right? They could never legislate anything regarding your personal property rights. That's period. That's it. So let me get into, well, here, watch this for a second. I actually got to go grab
resume is this very year. He's been a known member of the Communist Party. He served a Marxist dictator back in Ethiopia. During his time as health minister in Ethiopia, he's been accused of covering up 3 cholera epidemics. This guy is dodgy, dodgy, dodgy. And it comes as no surprise that it was once he had those roles in the ministry in Ethiopia that they saw Chinese money coming in support of him. It's also known that the CCP bent over backwards to get Tedros into the position that he currently holds. So I've got to say, as hair-raising as these new accusations are brought against Tedros, certainly not surprised.
No, you're absolutely right with everything you said there. And let's not forget, at the start of this pandemic,
World Health Organization is a group of mobsters. So now how does this control system work? I'm going to share the window just so we can have a little brief synopsis in case you're new to this channel and you actually make it past the first 13 minutes of no speaking, which would be pretty impressive. I'm going to have to edit that out. But let's go to this. First, this is Title I, Section 8 of the United States Code. It defines person, human being, child, and individual as including born alive infant. Now, this is something about statutory construction most people do not realize because you just use common language. You think including means to add on to the known definition, but it does not. When something is included, it is at the exclusion of everything else, which means including essentially means only this. Okay, so if I say that, vegetables include corn and beans, right? That means the only things I'm speaking about when I say the word vegetables is corn and beans. That means that lettuce is not a vegetable under my statutory construction and the definition of that word. And so when we read this, it says in determining the meaning of any act of Congress or of any ruling, regulation, blah, blah, blah. Just let's keep it simple. Any act of Congress, okay? The words person, human being, child, and individual shall include, which means it excludes everything else, every infant member of the species Homo sapiens who is born alive at any stage of development. That means you could be a 50-year-old infant. It doesn't matter, right? Now, why do I bring that up? Well, because an infant is not capable of being the heir, or is not capable of claiming their estate. And this all goes back to the Magna Carta. Okay, so the whole basis of common law is primarily concerned with well, first of all law regards property. Okay, that's it. All law is concerning the disposition of property, the use of property, the acquisition of property, and that includes your body. Okay, everything that you own, because you have to think about it. The sphere of the law is entirely spiritual. Okay, that's and every jurist worth his salt knows that, especially throughout the 16, 17, and 1800s. They knew that. So you have to look at it like this, that you are a soul in the material world, and everything that your soul wills to possess is your property. Okay. So property is the ultimate realization of your will. And so ultimately it all comes down to your will. You will something to be yours in order to serve your will, okay, as your bodily limbs serve your body. And so your property is the ultimate realization of your will. And so when someone else has the first right to your property, that means they have the first right to your will. That means you do not have free will. Your will is essentially under administration. It's under probate. It's called that your will has been probated. It's where the word probation comes from. When somebody's on probation, right? Your will has been probated. You do what the fuck you're told. That's it. Okay, so we go to the Magna Carta and we can look at this. The 3, 4, and 5, actually 2, 3, 4, and 5 and onward elsewhere throughout, it has to do with inheritance, okay? It says, like here, number 3, but if the heir of such a person is under age and a ward when he comes of age, he shall have his inheritance without relief or fine. And this is because William the Conqueror created the ecclesiastical courts, the priest courts, dealing with inheritance, and those courts were corrupt and they were stealing things from the noblemen. That's why the Magna Carta was written in the first place. They forced King John to sign it under threat of death because they were tired of having their heirs cheated out of their estates. So this entire thing, which is the first time common law was ever written down, is dealing with inheritance and property. Okay, well, with other things like the ability to enforce violations of the law through grand juries, which is all the way at the end of this. And of course, other things as well. This is the source of what became English common law throughout the 13, 14, 15, all the way up, and what became American common law. The only difference between English common law and American common law is American common law has no king. So even the barons under English common law were considered sovereigns. They were subject only to the king, and they were usually family of the king, okay? So they were what's called peerage. That's why when in the United States, they say you have a right to a jury of your peers. Peer does not mean equal. It means royal or sovereignty, sovereign. Okay, so only other sovereigns, a quorum of sovereigns, can judge as sovereign. And that's what the right to trial by jury actually means. The entirety of common law deals with property and inheritance, okay? And so it says right here, the guardian of the land of an heir who is underage shall take from it only reasonable revenues, which is actually fees, right? Customary dues and feudal services. He shall do this without destruction or damage to men or property, meaning while they're administering the estate, they're entitled to a portion of it for administering it. This is what they do still to this day, but they have to administer the estate without destruction or damage to the men or property of the estate, meaning the trustees, the servants, and the cattle, the everything. They can't damage any of it. They have to take care of it. That's what's going to lead me into Title 42. They created NASA and everything under the pretense of your welfare and taking care of you. It's unfucking believable. I can't believe it myself. When I actually looked under Title 42, which is supposed to just be welfare and healthcare, right? They actually put civil rights under it. They put everything of it under it because that's how they appropriate funds from your trust, right, to use for your welfare. And they also, of course, take a generous fee or revenue for themselves. They do this, right? So it says like this, if we have given guardianship of the land to a sheriff or to any person answerable to us for the revenues, and he commits destruction or damage, we will exact compensation from him. The land shall be entrusted to 2 worthy and prudent men of the same fee, right? Which means of the same title who have access. So basically, that's what the prosecutor and the judge are. Or the district attorney and the judge. Those are the 2 reasonable men who keep taking your property under administration and creating these constructive trusts with court docket numbers attached to them and fine you and fee you for improper use of the property under administration is essentially how that works, right? So for as long as a guardian, right here, for so long as a guardian has guardianship of such land, he shall maintain the houses, parks, fish, preserves, ponds, mills, and everything else pertaining to it from the revenues of the land itself. When the heir comes of age, which they make sure never happens, that's why all persons, individuals, human beings, all that, right? That's why it means infant at any stage of development. If you are a 14th Amendment United States person, you are an infant. That's why they created the 14th Amendment in the first place, okay? Because instead of being a free man upon the land, having unalienable rights endowed upon you by your creator, right? You are a coward, right? So you basically sacrifice that freedom in exchange for privileges and protection granted to you by the federal government under the 14th Amendment. That's why they say it's the equal protection law. They're not giving you anything you did not already have except for the benefit of being protected by the government. That's it. The United States. That's literally what it says in the 14th Amendment. Well, it doesn't say that you're not getting anything returned, but it says that they're going to protect and enforce your civil rights. Civil rights are not rights, they're privileges. Okay? Civil rights are slavery, essentially. They're privileges granted by the government, which can be taken away at any time if you don't do what the government says. You already had natural rights, unalienable rights, and the government, especially the federal government, didn't have shit to do with you, not in this country. Are you guys with me so far? Yeah, Dylan says, who decides what is reasonable? Well, the attorney, which to attorn means to transfer homage or service from one feudal lord to another, because you're an infant. So they have to have an attorney in there to transfer your homage and service from the United States to the private bank pretending to be a court, so they can generate a constructive trust and all that. You can't speak for you're an infant, just like Title I, Section 8 says of the United States Code. So they have to take care of the property of the infant. They have to take care of the infant. That's why your car yells at you if you don't wear your seatbelt. That's why you're forced to have medical insurance. That's why you're forced to have car insurance. That's why you're forced to have renter's insurance if you rent all this stuff. And they force you to pay for your own, of course, but they force you to have it because the property has to be maintained and taken care of and insured, right? For when the heir comes to claim it. That's what's going on, right? So anyway, moving on. If you guys think that sounds crazy, we'll go to the Michigan compiled laws of 1929. This is when they blended the jurisdiction. So throughout the late 1800s and early 1900s, because Michigan created its probate court before it even became a state. It created its probate court while it was a territory, because what the Magna Carta did was legitimize Roman trust law and the escheat and administration of estates. Escheat means to take under administration an estate, okay? Because the owner died without a will, the heir's not of age, the owner's lost and presumed dead, like under the Sete-KV Act, and under any of those presumptions, the state can then take the property under administration, can never own the property, and it can never be an heir because it's a maxim of law. Only God makes the heir. It can never be those things, but it can permanently administer the property if no one ever comes to claim it. So what remained for them to do? Just turn everybody into infants. And as far as the state citizen, the people are concerned, presume them dead, but the 14th Amendment corporate franchise presume that they're all infants and just administer the estates, right, permanently. And that's what the entirety of the United States Code is, just administrative code. That's why in the very first Title I, Section 8, it labels, and we'll go back to it just in case you're just now joining us, that the words person, human being, child, and individual shall include every infant member of the species Homo sapien who is born alive at any stage of development, because they are presuming that you are an infant, even if you're 50 at any stage of development. Doesn't matter. You're an infant. And guess what? You prove them right because you do not know how to claim otherwise. You don't even know to claim otherwise. You just go with it. You think these people can just create all these arbitrary rules telling you what to do with your property, and you go with it. Okay, and that's why you're an infant, because an infant has to know how to act and defend himself at law. That's a primary thing of coming of age. You have to know how to manage the affairs of your estate. So until you learn the estate or learn the law and learn how to reclaim your estate and how to manage the affairs and act and do business as a sovereign, stop bitching about the way things are run. So forward. If you think that's too much, notice that, so like I said, Michigan was getting rid of common law. Actually, I've got the Michigan Judicature Act where they talk about fully pulling away from the common law. They can never get rid of it because it's the fundamental law, the fundamental jurisdiction, and the only actual law. Everything else is statute and code, right? The only actual law is common law because it's based on natural law or divine law, right? It's based on nature and nature's God. It's the preliminary law. and all other jurisdictions arise out of it. So what they've done is they've basically buried that original jurisdiction under layers of presumption and contract and removed your access and knowledge of it, your knowledge of and access to it. And that is the very reason why the very first document giving them jurisdiction. See, this is their line of jurisdiction they have over here. Here, I'll zoom in a little bit if you guys can't see it. This is the reason they have this list, is it's their line of jurisdiction. And the very first one is the Magna Carta. Because, like I said, Michigan created its probate code before it was even a state, because they're a bunch of fucking inbred oligarch scumbags who planned on doing this the entire time. The very second thing they did about 10 years later was grant the probate judge license to sell the property of minors and infants under administration. So they could give the guardian of the infant or minor, whatever, license to sell the property, which of course was going to be somebody that worked for the court, for the benefit of the infant. And I've shown this on other streams as well, right? Or benefit of the minor, a benefit for the distracted person, the drunkard, the lunatic, whatever they use to presume you incompetent and take your property. They granted themselves the license, or I'm sorry, the guardian, which was usually somebody that was going to grease the hands of the court or work directly for the court, like an overseer of the poor. They had overseers of the poor in Michigan. When you went to these people to get a benefit, right, because you're poor, then they immediately took that as a presumption of incompetent, or they put you under, they presumed you're incompetent because you can't take care of yourself. You can't feed yourself. You can't exist without a government benefit. And so they used that to escheat your estate and take it under administration. And then they just give you portions of it called benefits. It's called beneficium abstinende. He who accepts the benefit abstains from being the heir. Beneficium abstinende. It's an ancient Roman maxim of law that still applies today. It applied the entire time. It was part of what was infused into common law via the Magna Carta, is that concept of taking the estate under administration, because the only person who can be the heir is not competent and dependent, right? And needs to be taken care of out of the estate. So if you're getting a portion of your estate as a benefit, say welfare, Social Security, whatever the case may be, that means you can't plan for your retirement, Social Security, or you can't take care of yourself, you can't manage your money. You need food, free food from the government or whatever, right? Daddy government going to feed you. You're an infant. You can't take care of yourself. You're receiving a portion of the benefit of your estate, right? A portion of your estate in the form of a benefit, and they take control of it. And of course, as we just read in the Magna Carta, they take a reasonable fee for administering your estate. And that's what they're doing. It's that simple. That's all they're doing. That's it. The whole thing is that. And that's why the Magna Carta is the very first document listed in the Michigan compiled laws. And this is the first document called compiled laws, because everything else was revised statutes of Michigan. And guess what? Those, or at least the early ones, did not have the Magna Carta listed as the first document, because they had yet to escheat the majority of the estates of the people. Okay. But this is the first document where they created the probate code. So everything else was probate statutes. Now they had the majority of people in 1929 under administration, right? And under municipal corporations of one form or another, right? And this, of course, is right after the stock market crash and right before the Great Depression really set in. And now they wanted to create this compiled laws where this is the first document that has the probate code that they see. The entire Magna Carta is in here. So they codified probate, and they created, if I actually go to, let me see, let me go to the table of contents. You guys would be interested to see this. And Hathi Trust is a bit tough to navigate because it's a bunch of scanned in pages, but we're going to go to the probate code. Okay. So miscellaneous provisions, township officers, blah, 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 part 1 townships. And we want to look at this because I'm going to show you guys. And guess what? If you look up the probate code of 1929 and online, like on Michigan.gov or whatever, on their statutory website where you can look up their statutes, they omit it. They removed it. They said they repealed it, but really they didn't repeal it. Well, they omitted it. And so really the only place you can actually find the entire probate code is in this old Michigan compiled laws. But the reason they called this compiled laws is because now they blended all the other jurisdictions and completely separated you from common law. Even though the fundamental foundation, the original contracts, the birth certificate contract and the creation of the Social Security Trust and all of that occurs under common law, because it's the fundamental base ground law that all of this takes place in, right? They have now removed you, or so they think, from being able to access and use it. Right. And that was their goal the entire time. I mean, the Michigan Judicature Act, check this shit out, guys. Let me show you. And I know I'm getting a little off subject of what I really wanted to get into today, but let's just look at this real quick. It's Judicature Act of 1914. Look at this. So this is the Michigan Judicature Act of 1914. Wait till you see what these treasonous pirate scumbags intended on doing right from the start, right in the beginning of this document. Okay. It's, he says, to eliminate obsolete and contradictory provisions, of which there are many, to reduce the volume of law as much as possible by providing a uniform procedure in analogous cases, right? Hold on. This is to enumerate the matter. Here it is. Number one, the matter of the abolition, which they can't abolish ever because it is the fundamental law. That's why they have the Magna Carta as their first document in the Michigan compiled laws. But they wanted to abolish. They just, I don't even know why they said abolish. They can't abolish it. It's stupid. You can still use it right now. Right now, you can still use it. It has not seemed to us practicable to go so far in matters of substance in abolishing the distinction between legal and, or I'm sorry, it's up here. The matter of abolition of common law forms of action has been the subject of a great deal of debate throughout the country for many years. We recommend the abolition of all such forms of actions, except the actions of assumpsit, trespass on the case, replevin, ejectment, senatori, mandamus, and quo warranto. Right. This is as far as, and those are all they're major writs. I forget what the actual term. It's high prerogative writs. Those are all high prerogative writs. Trespass on the case is what you file as a counterclaim against them when they attempt to administer your estate after you've claimed it. That's called trespass on the case. Replevin is the taking of your property unlawfully. Right. These are all high prerogative writs. So this is as far as we've deemed it wise to go in this direction. So they wanted to remove everybody from common law and place them under this fantasy jurisdiction of equity, which is just the enforcement of contracts. And then they built upon that till they got everybody under a uniform commercial code, which is entirely just the enforcement of contracts, right? And the primary contract is the administration of your estate. Right. Well, and that's the presumption, actually. And then the contracts are made out of the administration of your estate. And they're trying to enforce the contracts that were made on your behalf, such as mortgaging you to private third party investors and, inbred corporate oligarchs around the world who fuck their first cousins and their sisters and shit. Pieces of fucking shit. I'm sorry. I hate it gets me fired up, dude. I hate them fucking people. I hate them with a passion. You guys think that you hate the government. I fucking hate them. Okay. There's not a punishment harsh enough that I could think of that these people absolutely need. But let me rein in that passion a little bit because it's not very becoming. And we have to have a level head and be, when you're dealing with law, you have to be dispassionate and unemotional and look at it as if it's somebody else's case. But it does make my blood boil. Let me tell you something. It fucking makes my blood boil. So back to this. You know what? So that was going to be the next law class I did anyways, was the probate code. And it's in here, though. They list the whole thing, presumption of abandonment. They list all the ways they can escheat your estate. Essentially, they presume your parents abandoned you at the hospital. I mean, it gets so crazy if the doctor leaves the room and you don't express a desire to have your child return. They presume that you surrendered the infant, right? And then, of course, the birth certificate is abandonment by documentation. Okay, you literally put your child into bondage because the birth certificate is a bond, right? So let's get to the actual topic of tonight's, because I'm going to get off on that. I'm going to get off way deep into that. And so, but here, so Title 42 is the requirement for Social Security number when you're applying for a professional license, driver's license, occupational license, recreational license. Now, this is like a WordPress website that tells you this. And guess what section it is? 666. Title 42, Section 666. And these people are literally black magicians. I'm not bullshitting you. Let's go actually look at it, shall we? Title 42, Section 666. And what's another number they like to use a lot, right? 13. Well, guess what? Section 13. Now, what's funny about this, hold on. Why aren't you moving? Okay. What's funny about this is we're going to go to the top, and I want to show you what this is actually hidden in. This is actually the statute that they have enacted to attempt to force the United States infant into using their Social Security number to apply for a job, to apply for a license, which job is job, right? And apply is to beg, right? So you're literally begging for employment, which is to be a slave. You're begging to be a slave, right? But anyways, this is requirements of statutorily prescribed procedures to improve effectiveness of child support enforcement, right? What you have to understand when you have a Social Security number, and this is all under the Social Security Act, Title 4D, I believe the child support thing is. And when you have a Social Security number, you're accepting a deferred retirement benefit, okay? And so that makes you federal personnel right off the bat, right? And so you're actually a citizen of the District of Columbia. That's where the United States is located, because the United States that you are a citizen of is not the geographical collection of several sovereign states. It is actually the doing business as name of the District of Columbia, created in 1871. All right. And so United States citizen is actually United States employee. Okay. And you're actually a trustee and an agent for the United States, taking care of the estate that's under administration and has been mortgaged to the Federal Reserve and international investors, institutional investors. So now, since this is hidden in the child support section, right, of making child support enforcement more effective, then tell me all of this is paternity acknowledgement, all this. And look how they slide this in here, these fucking shisty little Gollum bastards. Is you go down to 13 and boom, recording of Social Security. This has nothing to do with paternity or anything. That's how they just they piecemealed this in here. It has nothing to do with paternity or anything. Procedures requiring that the Social Security number of any applicant for a professional license, driver's license, occupational license, recreational license, or marriage license be recorded on the application. Any individual who is subject to a divorce decree, support order, paternity determination or acknowledgement. Well, I guess there it has something to do with paternity, right? And then any individual who has died be placed on records relating to this. So this is where they create the need for Social Security number to apply for a license and all that stuff. And then look at this. It says the state, hold on, where is it at? It's something about motor vehicles. I was reading it earlier. Is it up here? No, it's got to be down here. Professional, blah, blah, blah. No, hold on 1 second. Support order. So this is support stuff. Payment of such support. They put something else in here about motor vehicles, but I'm digressing again. Here it is. Locator information from interstate networks. Procedures to ensure that all federal and state agencies conducting activities under this part have access to any system used by the state to locate an individual for purposes relating to motor vehicles and law enforcement. Well, that was interesting enough when I came across that, but little did I know that the entirety of the United States Code, which I'll show you in just a moment. Did I go back to the original? Okay, no, I didn't. Here, we got to go back. So look at this. They put literally everything related to the administration of your estate under the guise of your welfare and health and well-being, because remember, they have to take care of the property while it's under administration in case the heir comes and claims it. Look at this, all this stuff. So, of course, public health service, sanitation and quarantine, leprosy, cancer. Okay, yeah, it's all public health. So Social Security, the entirety of Social Security is under Title 42, right? Unemployment, low-income housing, all that stuff's good, right? But we go down a little bit further. National Science Foundation. What does that have to do with your welfare or health? But that's the whole guise. It's a very loose guise of saying for the welfare of man. And see, that word welfare, the same reason they call your food stamps welfare benefits, which I would never accept in a fucking million years, right? The government can never accept a benefit from the government. There's no such thing as a free lunch. They own your ass. If you have food stamps or benefits of any kind, they own your children, they own you, and there's literally contractually nothing you can say about it. Daddy government's feeding your kids. Those aren't your kids. Those are daddy government's kids, because you can't take care of yourself, or you are so irresponsible and you're so incompetent. You have children that you couldn't take care of. So you were recklessly having sex and procreating, right? You obviously have no skills. And this is how they look at it. I'm not being mean. This is how they look at it. This is old school common law that these ultra wealthy elite people, these inbred oligarch scumbags and aristocrats, are under common law, and they look at things through the lens of the old ways, going all the way back to the Magna Carta, the baronies and all that stuff. Like, they look at everything like that. It all has to do with being an honor, right? It's none of that changed. The only thing that changed is they created a nation of infants playing with monopoly money and took away your understanding of how the world's supposed to work. Honor and integrity and being and knowledge of the law, management of your house, having a seal, the difference between a contract and a covenant. They've taken away your knowledge, the importance of blood and inheritance. They've taken away your knowledge of all of that, right? And so it says, as soon as they can't administer, Dylan says, as soon as they can't administer your estate anymore because you claimed it lawfully, not legally. Remember, guys, the word legal comes from the Italian legare, which means to bind. So legal and lawful are two entirely different things. But yes, legally, these don't apply. Yeah, as soon as you're not a 14th Amendment infant anymore, none of this applies. Every act in this entire United States Code only applies to 14th Amendment infants. None of this shit will ever apply to you again, right? And that's the same thing. The reclaiming of your estate, in every common law country, if you're in England, Dorian, and I forgot who, Jerry, I know you're over, I think you're in Ireland, you're somewhere in the UK. All these common law nations, you reclaim your estate and they can no longer administer it and hypothecate it, which means to use as collateral. So that's a good question. Catch 22 says, are VA benefits government benefits or earned incentives? I would say earned incentives. That's what I would personally say is part of your contract, right? But that's still, I've been asked that before by other veterans, and that's kind of like so it's not something you got for free. You know what I mean? But it is also a portion of your estate, and it is a benefit. So one thing I was thinking about upon consideration of that is that you demand the entirety of your estate that they're holding and just giving you a benefit. So you have this, say, veteran estate, right? I guess would be just a simple way to put it. And they're obviously paying you portions out of it, right? So like, it's not just your average infant estate that they ordinarily administer and give benefits out of their Social Security trust account, right? Or based on that. Yeah, I would say it's more earned incentives, but it'd be the way that you claim it entirely or demand like a settlement of it. You know what I mean? So instead of just having a portion of it, you want to claim all of it. But then again, it having never been, see, that's the thing. I think that's uncharted territory as far as a lot of this stuff goes, because I want to say that like it is something you earned, but at the same time, it's also, you know, by signing up with the United States military, you did become federal personnel, actually, not just implied by your Social Security. So I'll get back to you on that. That is a tricky one. I've been asked that several times, and I've got this book by George Mercier called Invisible Contracts, and I think he might cover it in there. I need to finish reading it. It's a very good book though. But anyways, let's go, because this gets even more interesting, right? So they put water resources, everything for your welfare and benefit, but you will not believe what else they put in here for your welfare and benefit. The National Space Program, dude. The National Space Program. So you go in here and it says general provision, says repealed or transferred, repealed, omitted. I love when they put omitted, right? Repealed, transferred, repealed. So what I did was I actually went to the government website to look it up. And this is it, where it's actually listed. Devotion of space, and you'll notice how they present this is for your welfare and for your benefit, because of course everything that they have to do while they're administering your estate and taking portions of it as a fee for their administration, they have to be taking care of you the entire time, or at least pretend that they are. So like right here, I highlighted it, and I'm going to zoom in. It says the Congress declares that the general welfare, see how they specifically use the term welfare, of the United States requires that the unique competence in scientific and engineering systems and National Aeronautics and Space Administration also be directed towards ground propulsion system, blah, 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 right? And then look at this. They keep repeating the same sentence. The Congress declares that the general welfare of the United States requires that and see how they do that, because it always has to be about welfare and care of the infant. So they literally created the entire space program off of the mortgage of your estates and the administration of your estates. And they took, you know, like the Magna Carta says they took reasonable fees from your estate in order to use it to create this space program for your general welfare. How do you guys like that? They created the space program for the general welfare of the infants, right? In which, of course, those of us, they just made this shit up all together. And this is why I try to tell people that the whole NASA hoax thing and how that is intimately tied into the administration of your estates and their ability to generate money, or not money, but generate currency and take it for themselves, claiming to be using it for your benefit. All the astronauts that they pay, all the scientists that they pay, of course they pay themselves for, you know, setting it up and administering it, right? And that's why it's called they're all called administrations. NASA is an administration. Everything's an administration. Administration is purely and simply a trust term. Okay, that's it. So I brought that up and I brought up the entire Title 42 because by Trump taking us out of the World Health Organization, you guys have no idea. Even I knew, but I didn't even realize till I actually looked at Title 42 and seen how they grouped literally everything they do under Title 42 for your welfare and benefit, basically, which is how they appropriate funds for the maintenance of your estate. Is through Title 42, you know, and I knew about healthcare and welfare were in there, but everything's in there. Everything's in there. This is how they're stealing from you. This is how they're enslaving you, right? Debt slavery, right? This is exactly how they're doing it. I mean, look at this shit. Disposal of atomic energy communities, federal flood insurance, national space program, biomedical research in space. How do you even, transferred, repealed. Right? How would you even relate that to the general and that's all I have to say, actually. That's probably I do just the general welfare of the United States. allows them to do it. Because again, we'll pop back to the Magna Carta. For so long as the guardianship of such land, he shall maintain the houses, parks, fish, preserves, ponds, mills, and everything else pertaining to it from the revenues of the land itself. So they get to take the funds generated from the mortgage of your estate and apply it to the care and maintenance of your estate, which apparently includes the NASA and biomedical research in space and all of this other shit, right? And it all goes back to this, the Magna Carta right here. Okay, look at this. It's where else was it? It says the guardian of the land of an heir who is underage shall take from it only reasonable revenues, customary dues, and feudal services. He shall do this without destruction or damage to men or property. The feudal services are when they create the constructive trust in the court. That's a feudal service. That's what to attorn means. Look at this, guys. Watch. Webster's, right? Attorn. This is 1828. This is the original law dictionary, even though it doesn't say law dictionary, because common law is a language that in the day, everyone understood this language. So it was just a dictionary. And the word attorn in feudal law means to turn or transfer homage and service from one lord to another. It's the act of feudatories, vassals, tenants upon the alienation of an estate. Okay, so you're a trustee, part of the property of this state, okay, and this attorney attorns you over to the judge and the district attorney, right? Or the district attorney attorns you over to the court, right? And they create a constructive trust, and then that trust is an indenture, and it lays out the obligations that you are supposed to perform, right? Whether that be drug testing, probation, pay a ticket, doesn't matter, right? And you must, in order to satisfy those obligations, or you do not get released from that indenture till you satisfy those obligations, period. And then you just go back to your regular trust indenture under the United States Corporation, where you have to register your property, you put your little slave tag on the back of your car, get your permission to use it, of course, all of which you're feed for. You want to go feed your family, you want to hunt, you got to pay for permission to do that as well, because your property rights, your rights are held in trust. It's the mortgage of the estate. You guys get what I'm saying? Does anybody have any questions about any of that? So if you do, put it in the chat. I'll be checking. So essentially what's going on here with us leaving the World Health Organization, we were literally one elephant's ass hair away from being under the administration of the United Nations, and specifically the criminals in the World Health Organization, like the genocidal Tedros, who literally has charges levied against him for committing genocide in Ethiopia, and old Klaus Schwab and all them. So essentially what would have happened is if we stayed under the World Health Organization and the election went a different way, and you can say what you want about me, but if you don't see this stuff, you don't know how the law works, there's no way you can understand the gravity of what I'm saying, the weight of what I'm saying, which is what gravity actually means, gravitas, just weight. And what I'm saying to you is if the election would have went a different way, then they would have went ahead with their bird thing they were just trying to do that nobody's buying, right? And it wouldn't have mattered if you bought it or not, because you're just an infant. You have no say over yourself or your body or anything like that. And Kamala would have kept us signed on with the World Health Organization and the treaty that they have going on over there. And then the World Health Organization would have demanded lockdowns, would have demanded that you go and get jabbed up, would have demanded all of this stuff. And since that new treaty now puts them as the sovereign authority over the United States in the case of a health crisis, they have to do what the World Health Organization says they have to, and you have to do what the United States says you have to under Title 42 because you're an infant. And so what then would have happened was they actually would have been able to use force to force you to do this stuff, unlike last time. Okay? Because unlike last time, they didn't have the constitutional authority to do any of these things. They still wouldn't under the treaty, but treaties supersede the Constitution, essentially, because it's a contract. All contracts supersede the Constitution, believe it or not. That's how you ended up in this situation in the first place under the 14th Amendment. So that's quite the fucking bullet we just dodged, guys. That's all I'm saying. Okay, so do we have... Yes, Beyond Elemental says, well, if I'm an infant, well, that's not true, actually. So, where was I just reading that? It was one of the MCLs I had up, or something about, anyways, infants. Oh, no, that's where it was. Okay, so we'll actually read about that real quick, Beyond Elemental. I remember where it was. Whoops, check this out. So if we go here and we put in infant, and then we go to legal, so let's see, where was it? Okay, so it says considerable changes to the common law have probably taken place in many of the states. This is Bouvier's from 1856. So this is what infant is actually supposed to mean, and now they loosely interpret it to mean incompetence, right? Well, they don't loosely. They use statutory construction to make it mean incompetence at any stage of development. But what it says right here, it says, in general, an infant is not bound by his contracts unless to supply him for necessaries, right? And then it says, or unless he is empowered to enter a contract by some legislative provision, as with the consent of a parent or guardian, right, to put himself apprenticed or to enlist in the service of the United States. Bam. So they give you the power to contract to a certain extent, right? And they bind you to those contracts through legislation, right? So they give you the authority as an infant to contract through legislation is how they do it. And let's see, there's another thing that says the protection. Okay, so the protection which the law gives an infant is to operate as a shield to him, to protect him from improvident contracts, but not as a sword to do injuries to others. An infant is therefore responsible for his torts, slander, trespass, and the like, but he cannot be made responsible in an action ex delicto, where the cause arose. What the hell does delicto mean? Oh, it's just committing a crime, I guess. So anyway, yeah, so they can actually hold you to contracts through legislation, which is what the entire Securities and Exchange Act, the Securities Act, Securities and Exchange Act, the Trust Indenture Act, the Investment Companies Act, and all this stuff lays the groundwork for you to play with monopoly money and these debt contracts, essentially, and they bind you to them. So no, infancy does not immediately give you a shield against, but they do treat you as an infant for the purposes of taking control of your estate and administering it in order to generate debt currency and then use it for the care of your estate, right? So the pooled up trust that's been put forth by an undisclosed third-party institutional investors called a public charitable trust. It's the public charitable trust, right? And so they mortgage your estate, and then they're allowed to use this public charitable trust as long as it's for the maintenance of your estate and for the care of the infant, which is you, obviously. And apparently that's how they created NASA, for the general welfare of the United States. And okay, so sovereign citizen, that's an oxymoron, right? Yeah, he said, okay, until they capture him and say, no, we can do whatever. You're right. You are free to exercise all of your rights, provided you don't get caught doing it, right? The British did steal the gold in more specifically, the bankers stole our gold in 1933. Uno reverso, CJ says. There you go. Just hit them with the Uno reverse card. That'll work. Yes, sovereign citizen is an oxymoron. You cannot be both. That's absolutely true. Now, interestingly enough, there is in the original legislation of the country, or the original under common law, state citizen, where the word state is lowercase, the word citizen is capitalized, but it still does bind you to the state, basically. So the only way to actually truly be sovereign, right, is to reclaim your estate and not contract with any state entity whatsoever, whether it be the United States or state or whatever. You're just a free man upon the land. That's it, right? So let's see, what other questions do we have here? Still working and lurking. We got, so a person receiving Social Security disability has to let go of that in order to correct the status. Yes, unfortunately, yes, that is the case. I'm sorry to tell you. The Social Security is a deferred retirement benefit. It's now, with that being said, you paid into it. If you paid into it, like say, throughout your life, you could take the United States to the Federal Court of Claims and basically get your money back in a lump sum, or at least try to. I don't know how successful you'd be, but you'd definitely be right in doing so. But then again, that's the whole thing. You got to stop looking at it as if it's money, because none of it's money. Even I make use the misnomer money, but there is no money. There's none. There's no money in the world right now, in circulation anyway, unless it's gold or silver. There is only debt contracts. That's it. Abracadabra, yo. Let's see. Sit, us, and ship. I mean, yeah, phonetically, citizenship. Yeah, hey, that's pretty funny. But yeah, it's a ship anyway. Because that's the whole thing. It's the entirety of commerce is basically the high seas. So everything's on a ship. The only jurisdiction, well, there's two jurisdictions that are on the land. That would be the ecclesiastical, known as probate today, and then common law. But everything else is essentially it's the sea, if you wanted to put it that way. But no jurisdiction exists independently anyways. And I'll give you guys an example. So common law is the law of the land, right? But you can't be only in common law because you have the right to contract. So and contracts are necessary under certain circumstances. It's not like you're going to, so once you contract, now you're in equity, right? If you engage in international commerce, that's maritime admiralty, you can still be under common law. Like I said, common law is the default jurisdiction out of which all of the other jurisdictions arise. And all of those jurisdictions, believe it or not, actually arose between, say, 1000 and 1940, whenever the federal government created the Uniform Commercial Code. That's the last jurisdiction. That is the Neo Lex Mercatoria, or merchant's law. And all of these jurisdictions arose, let's just say, in the last 1,000 years. Okay. Common law is the only one that I take that back. Roman civil law and common law. So equity and law are the only two jurisdictions that did not arise in the last 1,000 years. Equity is basically Roman civil law, but when we created this republic, we included it along with common law for the enforcement of contracts, because that's kind of how it goes hand in hand. Common law, under common law, you have the right to contract. That's one of your natural unalienable rights. But the enforcement of contracts can be done in common law, but generally where there are, so say you want to create an injunction, right? So say you own a bar or restaurant, and one of your employees keeps smoking, and say like you're just under common law, right, with equity as an option. Your employee keeps smoking, it drives customers away. Okay, well, there's nothing you can do under common law to enforce, to basically enforce your employment contract in a way to make them stop smoking, because they're free to smoke and they haven't actually. So common law only deals with injury. Okay, it only deals with what has happened. It does not deal with what could happen or will happen, right? So you would take that to equity, and in equity, you can file what's called an injunction. And that's where it starts to get out there into the land of imagination and pre-crime. And that's why they wanted to move away from common law into equity, so they could move into the realm of imagination and pre-crime. And now you can take your employee to court and be like, I don't want this person to smoke in my restaurant because it drives away customers. It could potentially cost me money in the future, and they could potentially burn down my bar. And the court of equity is actually, that's where you actually get a judge. Okay. See, in a common law court, you don't have a judge. It's a superior court of record. You have a magistrate who's basically a paper pusher, because the plaintiff is the sovereign of the court. And if they're, unless the defendant requests a trial by jury, then the jury becomes the sovereign tribunal of the court. Okay. And the judge, or not judge, the magistrate is only there to point out facts of law during the dispute between the plaintiff and defendant, we'll call them, and to make sure the jury understands how it applies to common law case law that's been set down before. And that's the magistrate's only job, and to push the paper. That's it. There is no judge under common law in a superior court of record. Okay. But in equity, you do have a judge, and now that judge is allowed to enforce the law of his private conscience. So if he agrees with you, because equity comes from chancery, and the way chancery rose about was when the king would hold a court, the priests came up to him and said, hey, king, we know you're busy dealing with all this other stuff. Why don't you let us hear these cases, and we'll hold your conscience for you, and then we can decide these cases, right? And that's where chancery came from. And it's basically the enforcement of private conscience. All statutory law is essentially the enforcement of private conscience, unless it adheres to common law. It's the only time it's not, but it's still statutory and requires contract to be subject to it. But see, adhering to common law, then even if you weren't under contract and you violated what was written in a statute, but it reflects common law, you'd still be committing a crime under common law. So that's why all statutory law in this country is supposed to adhere to common law. But back to the equity thing and the injunction. So now you can file an injunction, say might drive my customers away, cost me money, and burn my place down. So I want him to not smoke in my restaurant. Now the judge can issue an injunction against that employee, and now that's an enforceable court order through equity. And that's where equity came into play, and why these lawyer scumbags wanted to move away from common law, because common law is very strict. It's just cut and dry, right? There's no discovery in common law. You get the entire case up front. There has to be a victim, and there has to be a crime. There has to be a victim, right? And it only deals with what has happened, not what could happen. Whereas equity deals with what could happen, the what ifs. That's where your DUI comes from. That's where your seatbelt laws come. Oh, you might have hit somebody, which I actually agree with. Like, people shouldn't drive drunk, so I'm not advocating that. But objectively, it is a form of pre-crime. I mean, it just is. And also, the seatbelt, oh, well, you could get into an accident and fly through the windshield. Yeah, well, you could fucking, spontaneously combust, but who gives a shit? That's the whole thing about equity. And that's the main reason why lawyers wanted to get into the realm of equity and away from common law. And the way they did that was a combination of equity, maritime admiralty, and probate. And military. Actually, they used all other four jurisdictions. I'll explain to you guys real quick, and then I got to shut this down so I can hit the hay. But the way they did this was, well, the military jurisdiction was the Lieber Code that Abraham Lincoln put in place, that's still in place to this day, because it's never been removed by proclamation or presidential order, ever. It never has been. So it's still in effect. The maritime admiralty, of course, is by expanding maritime jurisdictions to inland waterways, canals, and stuff like that, so they could basically introduce lex mercatoria, or which is international merchants law. They did that simultaneously with the Civil War, or with the military law. The equity is the enforcement of contracts that are basically entered into on your behalf under presumption, which is done through probate. And all of this is put together to take you out of common law. So they presume you're an infant, they enter into contracts on your behalf, then they enforce. So they presume you're an infant, that's probate. then they take power of attorney over you, enter into contracts on your behalf, and then enforce those contracts. That's equity. And the way that they got the presidential emergency powers and complete plenary commercial authority under Article 1 was through the martial law and maritime admiralty laws introduced as a result of the Civil War. And all of those things were combined together to take you away from common law, but common law is still there. You can still use it. So that brings me to the last thing I want to bring up. You know what? I'm not even going to bring it up on this stream because this stream's been real choppy. Didn't go as smooth as I wanted to. I spent the first 13 minutes fucking talking to myself, apparently, because I had the computer muted and didn't realize it, which I apologize. I'm going to see about editing that as soon as I get off here. But I'm trying to determine a good way to start teaching you guys how to do actions at common law, how to write and file actions at common law, so that, you know, when you get a traffic ticket or anything, when you're dealing with anyone trying to administer your estate, you know how to combat them. And then I also want to teach you guys how to claim your estate. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to do that. Couple reasons that I do not want to just start doing it is, one, I don't want to waste my time on people that aren't going to take it seriously or are going to abuse it and misuse it and actually draw attention to this one thing that actually works and basically fuck it up for everybody else. And then, which you can't really fuck it up, but you can, you know, there's idiots. And then secondly, I only want people that are serious, dude. That's actually, so we can just sum up everything I'm about to say and just say that I only want people that are absolutely serious about learning how to do this and using it, and to have serious contributing members of a group I'm thinking about starting. I'm trying to pick a name where we can get together, have discussions, have classes, go through. I've got a ton of templates. I've got a ton of books with templates in it. I've got a ton of examples. I got a ton of cases that have actually worked. And, you know, I got a ton of material, but I don't want to lose people. And a lot of times when I get real into the intricate details of how to file an action or how to do any of those things, I lose a lot of people. The people start dropping out of the stream, and it's just, you know, it's just kind of a waste of time. So I'm gonna think about how to do that, and I'm gonna get back to you guys on the next stream. I'll probably have a stream. I'll probably do another morning stream either tomorrow or Friday. And then towards the end of that, I'll kind of present if I've thought of a good way to set this up in a way that's good for Rumble and YouTube and brings everybody in. I also want to try to find a streaming platform to where, like, I can have people actually join and interact, like more than just 10 people, you know, where we could have, like, you know, kind of like a classroom, like a Zoom type thing, but I don't know how that's going to work. So we'll figure it out though. So let me go ahead and read the few comments before I get out of here. Of course I would. She says, Earth Goat Test says, so happy you continued despite being muted in the beginning. Yeah, of course I would. I mean, I'm not going to not stream. I just got to go edit it. So when people come back and watch it, they're not like, is this guy retarded or what? Like, apparently I am a little bit, because I didn't know I muted the stream. And I wasn't reading your guys' comments. So, but hey, shit happens sometimes, right? Like I said, high quality knowledge, low quality production right here at Burn the Corporate Fiction. I'm working on it though. Sarah G says, Burn the Corporate Fiction, so on point for me. I have part of my grandfather's estate, which has been escheated back to the state that I can't seem to make headway on. You actually have, yeah, we can talk about that. You have part of it, like what, just, do you have a title, or do you have a warranty deed, or do you have, like, what do you have that evidences an ownership interest in the estate? And depending on what you have there, and what state you're in, and if we look in the old laws, yeah, we could determine how best to get that taken care of for you. See, your own estate's real easy, especially once you claim it. The inheritance of your grandfather's estate, however, like, did he leave a will? There's a lot of factors we have to look at, but generally, like the Northwest Ordinance, if we look at that real quick, I'll show you. This is interesting. So, like, when I mean go back to the old laws, because laws build on each other. An attorney tried to tell me one time, oh, that's old law. I said, dude, there's no fucking such thing as old law. What are you talking about? There's old code, old statutes that get repealed and changed stuff, but there's no such thing as old law. Like, the law is the law. Common law dealing with inheritance and, blood and estate. I mean, literally once upon a time, you had to mix your blood with the land as part of livery of season in order to take possession of it. I mean, that's how serious this stuff is. And then, what you're doing is you're binding not only yourself as a caretaker of the land, and this stuff's biblical. It's like, it's actually spiritual. And not only are you binding yourself as a caretaker of the land, but you're also binding that land to your blood and your descendants. And it's literally, and then even in all the way up to recent times in the 1800s, livery of season was you got together and, you had a ceremony with witnesses to the person you were selling the land to or buying the land from, and that the person buying it would give the consideration, money, whatever, and then the person selling it would literally pick up a piece of the land, whether it be dirt and grass or whatever, and there would be an exchange, and then you would acknowledge the delivery of season. You'd file an acknowledgement, and then it became your land, and that was it would be on the county record, the same place where you file your claim of your estate. Everything is the county record. The county record is your court, essentially, and everything gets filed on there. Whatever file is filed on there and unchallenged stands as law, as the highest evidence of in fact at law. So let me look at this real quick. Let's see, is it organic? Yeah, Organic Acts of the Territories of the United States. Whoops, why are you over here on this page? We want to be over here. Okay, so, and why didn't that pop up? That's annoying. Hold on. There we go. So this is the Organic Acts of an ordinance for the government of the territory of the United States northwest of the River Ohio. So this is the Michigan territory, Ohio territory, all this. This was the original ordinance for that, right? And it's funny because ordain means to essentially create law, and establish means to write it down. So it said, like, when we the people do hereby ordain and establish, it means create and set down this as law. And in order for it to be law, again, like I said before, you have to have sovereign authority, and it has to conform to common law. So right here in the second paragraph, be it ordained by the authority aforesaid, right? That the estates both of resident and non-resident proprietors in the said territory dying intestate shall descend to and be distributed among their children and the descendants of a deceased child in equal parts. Think about this for a second. What I'm trying to really show you guys is, boom, right in the beginning of the Magna Carta, right? What are they talking about? Inheritance and estates and property, descendants of land, right? And what is it talking about right here at the beginning of the Northwest Ordinance? The estates of the resident and non-resident proprietors in the said territory dying intestate shall descend to and be distributed among their children and the descendants of a deceased child in equal parts and descendants of a deceased child or grandchild to take the share of their deceased parent in equal parts among them, and where there shall be no children or descendants, then in equal parts to the next of kin. So it's literally just like the Magna Carta. I mean, a lot of the original, almost every single original constitution, depending on how old the state is a reflection of the Magna Carta. You're talking about like untainted, unchanged jurisprudence for 600-700 years. And that's because common law is rigid and inflexible because it's not made by man. It's only recognized by man. It is made by God. It's a reflection of it's basically the application of natural law in society. That's what common law is. Mankind does not make law. And that's what common law is. Common law is only the recognition of law, but then is the recognition of that natural law. And then, but then the Magna Carta did infect it with the whole trust law. But then again, you could say trust law is also divine law from a Christian perspective of the first estate being the Garden of Eden given to Adam and Eve, they being the heirs of that estate, and the caretakers of that estate, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of where this all comes from. It's not kind of, it's absolutely where it all comes from, but you guys get the idea. So, all right. Any questions? Any other question? And we can go over that, Sarah G, if you give me some more details on that. Maybe I'll hold an open panel one of these mornings, and we can have some people on here, and we can all kind of, we can have an opportunity to ask questions and actually have discussion and stuff if you guys would like to do something like that. So, let me make sure I'm not. Let's see. So, yeah, so happy you continued. Could you do it by a group email? That's a lot of typing. I mean, damn, I'd rather say it, teach it by, orally, and then show you examples and stuff like that on the, we can go through and I would end up typing stuff out like in a class so that we could see how it's set out and stuff like that. But to type out the whole description of how to do everything in an email, Peg, that's rough. That's a tall order, my friend. Let's see. I talk to myself all the time. Thanks for the added content. No problem, man. No problem. I like being able to stream more. I get more acclimated to the program and the software and stuff for streaming. I get better at using it and try to increase the production value for you guys. I mute the first 13 minutes of the stream for you just to switch it up a little bit. I get better 2 steps or 1 step forward, 2 steps backward with that, right? Let's see here. I need help putting our house that's in my wife's name into a trust. And me, you never want to be the administrator, bro. Administrators are appointed by necessity of law because the estate is intestate. And what intestate means is there's no will, meaning it's without a will. The word will doesn't just mean what you want to happen after you die. That's your last will. Will, you make something your property, but will is how you do everything. Right? That's why they need your consent to do things. That's why they manufacture consent through the media, television, social media, engineered crises. They manufacture consent through the Hegelian dialectic because they need to take control of your free will. They need your consent. Everything is will. So my point in saying that is you want to be the executor. Executor is a barbarism in Roman law because they have no such thing, right? That's a common law trust term. Okay, not a Roman law trust term. And the executor is appointed by will, the will of the testator. Okay, so you would be the testator if you create the trust, right? But you also want to make sure you're the executor because there cannot be an executor and an administrator at the same time. In fact, that's an interesting thought. If somebody put their body in a trust and then made themselves the executor, that's actually a very interesting thought. I'd have to think about it more. It could be really stupid or really brilliant. I don't know. But then when they try to take it as part of the estate as collateral, like in a court proceeding, and you say, I'm the executor of this body here and of the trust that controls this body. But anyway, it's much easier to just claim your fucking estate. I'm just getting into like, fantastic thoughts here. Ever considered squatters' rights? Yeah, so that exists in both civil law and common law. The civil law version of it is that you basically go take over a house and just start improving upon it and pay the back taxes and stuff, and then boom, you basically it's abandoned property rights essentially is what it is. Some of the best. You guys are still going on about talking to yourself, huh? Adorable, funny name, is claiming our estate per what you are doing the same as what the 0% teaches. I actually have that book. Similar, he's missing what I'm talking about. He goes back to, he understands the 14th Amendment, citizenship and all that stuff, but he hasn't went all the way back to the Magna Carta and understand that the entire thing is the escheat and administration of the estate. That's why that's not in his book. If he did have that and did know that, there's very, 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 very few people that know this and I'm not being like conceited or anything. I'm just being honest. The vocational science of freedom knows this, and I know this and how to explain it. And that's really the only people that's the only people I know of that know how to actually explain and prove this and show how it works and apply it to every scenario in society to demonstrate this is exactly what's going on. Very, very few people know this stuff. But it is and once you know this, it makes everything that seems so complex so much more simple, because it really is that simple. And then they bury it under, unnecessary complexity of codification and statutory law, and they hide it. But when you look at, like I said, when you look at Title I of the United States Code, Section 8, it shows you right there that they are only referring to infants when using the words person, human being, child, and individual. And it says any act of Congress. So in determining the meaning of any act, so any act in this entire fucking United States Code, when they use the words person, human being, child, and individual, they mean infant, member of the species Homo sapiens, because they're not going to say man, who is born alive at any stage of development. And what they mean by that is a certificate of live birth, and it doesn't matter how old you are. You're still an infant if you're a person, human being, child, or individual under the jurisdiction of the United States Code and Congress. So, and the reason they do that is so they can administer your estate, because that's what they've put up as collateral to issue the Federal Reserve notes that they use for the benefit or for your benefit and the maintenance and welfare of your estate, including the trustee of the estate, which would be you, the infant. So, does that make sense? It's oh yeah, who's that YouTube guy that shows people how to be the TV liberation with some weird blood oath? That's fucking weird. I don't know. I never heard of that guy, CJ. Fucking autocorrect. Yeah, I don't know what you were trying. Quasi-luminous. Yeah, I've never heard of that guy. Set-to-Gate Trust Act of 1666 actually builds on the administration of the infant estate. That's where it allowed them to use the presumption of death after basically no action or nobody hearing from you for 7 years. Without you making an action to claim your estate for 7 years, they can presume you dead and automatically take your estate under administration, which is what they do after your parents abandon you by documentation at the hospital via the birth certificate. So then by the age of 7, they escheat your estate, and then they pledge it to the United States, and then the United States mortgages it. It goes to the DTCC, and then they use it to issue a series of notes. And then they also create the Social Security underwriting investment accounts, a trust. They create that trust, and that trust is what they use to draw from to literally pay for everything, right? So they buy tanks, missiles, all that shit. So let's see, what else we got? Constitution for or of now, Act of 1871. So no, that's like a red herring. It's supposed to be the Constitution for the United States, but that would make more sense. But I've never seen a copy of that. What the Organic Act of 1871 did was it created the District of Columbia. Then the District of Columbia, it created the District of Columbia Corporation. Okay. And then the District of Columbia created the DBA, United States, doing business as the United States. And that's the United States that they presume you to be a citizen of. So if we go over here, I'll show you guys this. This is under the UCC, right? Section 9-307, location of debtor. This lets you know that this is what So location of United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. So the United States that you're a citizen of or a federal personnel of is not the geographical union of several Confederate states. It is the DBA of the District of Columbia. It's a District of Columbia. So that's what the Organic Act of 1871 did. And then that corporation has territorially occupied the several states. So I'll show you guys another little thing, and I should really get off here because I got to go to bed. But the term resident, or I was going to type out the whole sentence I just said. That's how you know I'm tired. Resident, right here. So this is Michigan compiled laws. Resident means every person who resides, which a resident is a foreigner. I can show you guys that next time, like the elementary law. I've got a treatise on elementary law, and it tells you that the difference between a resident and an inhabitant or citizen is that the resident is a foreigner who's entitled to the protection of the state in which he resides, but is not actually native and doesn't enjoy all the rights and benefits of being one of the people of that state or nation. Resident means foreigner, but resident here means every person who resides in this state and establishes that he or she is legally present in the United States. So the United States is a federal territory. It's a federal occupation by a foreign corporation, territorial occupation by a foreign corporation, right? So the reason you have to establish that you're legally present via driver's license, birth certificate, whatever contract that establishes you as a 14th Amendment infant, when you do that, you're establishing that although you're in this state, which is a sovereign state, that you are legally present in the territorial jurisdiction of this corporation, the United States. So that's what it means to be legally present somewhere. That's why they use this term specifically, legally present in the United States. Okay, they try to trick you and say, oh, well, you have to be a United States citizen. Everybody's a United States citizen, right? Well, not so much, guys. McDonald, hold on, where is it? How is it spelled? Damn, I'm tired. There it is. McDonald v. State, Indiana Supreme Court, right? From just after they created the 14th Amendment in 1883. The 14th Amendment was 1868, I want to say. And right here, this guy basically was found guilty of murder. He appealed it because one of the jurors he said was an alien, right? Right here. It says, because it says section 1793 of the revised statutes 1881 provides that the following and no other shall be good causes for challenge to any person called as a juror in any criminal trial. So he was challenging this juror under the 9th section of that he's an alien. And so basically it says that they denied his appeal. And the reason being is because the evidence of bushing, and this is the juror on his voir dire, showed that although he was not a citizen of the United States, he was a citizen and voter of the state. And under Section 2 of Article 2, Section 84, Revised Statutes 1881 of our state constitution, one may be a citizen of a state and yet not a citizen of the United States. And that's also confirmed in Thomason v. State, Corey v. Carter, right? McCarthy v. Volka, whatever the hell that guy's name is. So, and in re, which means in the matter of Willits. So, yeah, you know, that's all bullshit that lawyers try to tell you. To be a citizen of the United States is to be an elective franchise of a foreign corporation, right? And federal personnel, now that the Social Security is in place, you accept a retirement benefit. So, again, location of debtor is in the District of, or the location of the United States is in the District of Columbia. That's the only place that exists. United States does not exist in Michigan. Okay, Michigan is just Michigan. It's its own country. Always has been. Always will be. In fact, let me see if I can pull this up. And because I tell you guys it's a Confederate state, right? Oops, revised. Revised codes of law of Virginia. Revised statutes in the state of Michigan. This has got to be it, I hope, because I really got to go to bed. but I always want to show you guys stuff. 1846. Okay, so this is the appendix of the revised statutes of Michigan in 1846. This is shortly after we became a state, and this is basically our acceptance of statehood. And let me show you guys that. Well, actually, let me bring the controls back up so I can zoom in slowly but surely. All right, so we go down here, and it says, now although, no, we'll hide this. Okay. All right, so right here, this paragraph, I can't highlight it, but if you see where my mouse is moving. Now, although this convention are of the opinion that the Congress of the United States had no constitutional right to require the assent aforesaid as a condition preliminary to the admission of the said state into the Union, nevertheless, as the Congress have required, such assent to the said condition as the interest and prosperity of the state will be greatly advanced by an immediate admission into the Union as one of its sovereignties, and the people of the said state are solicitous to give to her sister states and to the world unequivocal proof of her desire to promote the tranquility and harmony of the Confederacy. So the whole psychological operation of the Civil War, where they tell you that it was the Union versus the Confederates, it was, but the Confederates were the patriots. They were the ones actually defending the original republic. The Union that was created under martial law and executive order by Abraham Lincoln is the corporate union that exists to this day, that renamed itself the District of Columbia, doing business as the United States. But the original union of several sovereign nation states, the union in which the people are sovereign, is the Confederate Union, created by the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution. It says right here in 1846 that the said state are solicited to give to her sister states and to the world unequivocal proof of her desire to promote the tranquility and harmony of the Confederacy. Confederacy. All states are Confederate. Michigan, Confederate. New York, Confederate. Maine, Confederate. Massachusetts, fucking Confederate. All of them are Confederate. Okay, the traitors joined the corporate union. And Michigan could not wait to do it because they set up the probate code before they even became a state and could not wait to escheat the estates and all the property of their people, of her people, let's say, and then be able to mortgage that to a private central bank in order to enrich themselves. And it's not even entirely, it's never even been about money. It's about power. It's about the administration of your estate to tell you what to do with your property and how to use your property and fine you and fee you for the use and the misuse of it. That's it. Oh shit, you guys didn't see this at all. My bad. Hold on. I thought I was sharing the fucking whole screen. Boom. Here, there's another gaff right here. Look, Confederacy. See where it's moving? To promote the tranquility and harmony of the Confederacy. This is the revised statutes of the state of Michigan, May 18th, 1846. Confederacy. All states are Confederate, guys. So, Salad says, oh, yeah, no problem. Says, thank you. Canada is actually a corporation formed under the laws of the United States, believe it or not. So, but it's actually a territorial, it's a colony of England. You guys, so like, for instance, Justin Trudeau had to give this long blood oath to the Queen when he took power. So, that whole offer about becoming in the 51st state, that's why you guys get pissed about it. But like, honestly, that would be the best thing that could happen to you, because you would then be entitled to our original sovereignty, which is of the people and not a crown, if that makes sense. So, all right. Rethink says you have yourself a damn good name. That's your, well, your son has a good name. It means king, little king, but king, we'll take it. And Gallic. We have Dorian is, what is W-A-Y? What's that mean? Walking Axel. Lizard says, I'm here for law. Looking forward to your content on actions. Absolutely. Well, that's why I'm refocusing the morning show to be more law heavy. So, but anyways, I'm sorry about all the gaffes and the not showing you the screen and the muted first 13 minutes. Next stream will be much better. Hopefully that doesn't chase some of you away, because the content is top notch, and the more of us that learn this, the faster we'll be able to actually fix things. Like I said, we should be grateful that, in as much as a lot of you hate to hear it, Donald Trump saved us from some pretty serious shit under the World Health Organization and under the climate accords, where they were going to tell you could have one mouthful of meat. And I know people hate to hear that and they want to throw shade on him. But honestly, as president, he's doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. He doesn't have fuck all to do with the people whatsoever. He's supposed to run the business of the union as far as international diplomatic relations, foreign trade, and interstate and international. Well, that is foreign trade, but interstate trade as well. And return the sovereignty to the states. And I mean, so far, so good. If he keeps doing business like this, then we might have a good 4 years. But at the end of the day, the government can never give you your sovereignty. That's like the servant telling the master he's the master. So it's up to us to learn how to reclaim our estates and to use common law to fend off the wolves when they try to administer it. So anyway, yes, and Dylan says keeping us out of bad deals. That's pretty much all you want, is all you could hope for with the president. So you guys have an excellent day. I'm going to try to edit the first fucking 10 minutes of the stream. Then I am going to bed. So I will see you guys, if not tomorrow, Friday for sure. Yeah, technical difficulties weed out those who are, yeah, that's true. I guess that is definitely true. Trust for sure. All right, you guys have an excellent